We have breaking news. A federal judge in Seattle has temporarily blocked President Trump's controversial order barring nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States for 90 days. U.S. District Judge James Robart put the travel ban on hold until more proceedings could take place, ruling that the states that sued to block the order were likely to win.
All right, this is Devil's Advocate, where we talk about news and current events.
My name is Brandon Condit. I'm your host.
And my name is Mitchell Hernandez. I'm also your host.
The Devil's Advocate is kind of an idea that we came up with in a brainstorm. It's an alternative opinion talk show to the ones that you'll typically see or see on TV or hear on the radio. The idea kind of being that the two sides don't get together enough to have a reasonable conversation. Everybody is always speaking their talking points on TV and radio and shouting at one another. And we thought, you know what if two guys with two differing perspectives could get together and not blow each other up at the end of the conversation? So let's begin.
It's obviously a historic decision and an important one for the rule of law and for the people of the state of Washington and the people of our country. I said from the beginning, it is not the loudest voice that prevails in a courtroom.
So obviously the big story of the morning, because this administration likes to do everything at midnight, is the second hurdle that Donald Trump is experiencing in his travel ban on those Muslim countries, and then him filing an appeal about through that whole process. So that's the biggest story of the morning.
Right. Now, I did want to take a little bit of time right at the beginning to do a little bit of clarification on my last point. As soon as we put it up, by Monday, I was like, all right, I need to fix this a little bit. Obviously, everyone knows that Kellyanne Conway came out and was talking in reference to a story that I also brought up, which was that, Bowling Green massacre and all that. Clearly did not happen whatsoever.
Right.
So I didn't want my comments to get conflated with her comments, because I was basically speaking of, and I did get a little bit of it wrong, but basically what Obama did was...
Mitch got some blowback on the internet. That's what happened.
No.
So now he has to confess his alternative fact-telling self.
Yeah, I was already going to call myself out, but There Goes Bears did go ahead and basically show me that... I wasn't totally 100% accurate in what I was saying. Now, at the same time, I don't want my comments to get conflated with Kellyanne Conway's, because she was saying something was pretty intense going on. And basically what I was wrong about was that instead of all visas, it was one particular type of visa that they banned for 6 months, while he was going to go ahead and try to rework it and make it kind of update it. So that was my point I was trying to make, and I didn't quite get it across. Still, in the overall scheme of things,
now I feel better for not really having an argument, because your story didn't happen.
It's basically true, but I do have to call out that one part that I did get wrong.
That's fair.
And then, but basically...
We here at the Devil's Advocate are totally all about accountability. We and Betsy DeVos agree that you should be accountable.
Keep calling me out every time I do it. I'm sure it's going to happen again.
I'm sure I've said nothing that's incorrect at all.
Right.
So anyway, so back to that story, just quickly, we'll touch on it, because I don't know that there's too much. Other than the fact that, like a week ago, executive order stopping travel from 7 Muslim countries gets halted by a judge in Seattle. Is that right?
Was that the first one?
I think that was the first one.
Was that Yates?
No, that's different. So then the Trump administration, did they get it returned back on? Isn't that what happened?
Oh, you're talking about the executive order. They did do that. It never was really gone. They fired the first judge who shut it down, and then they got it going again. And this one is trying to do a temporary stay or something. They're saying that they need to review it. I think more the probability is that they're going to have to change the wording even though
Right.
I think technically it's legal, and they're going to keep running into roadblocks from the judicial side is the only one that's trying to do something, since the Congress legislative side has no power on the Democratic side.
Right.
So they're going to have to get something done. Judiciary.
What's interesting, though, is that the judge who this weekend on Friday night turned down Donald Trump's appeal to get the so what happened was the judge in Seattle halted put a halt order on the executive order, right? So the Trump administration appealed that process, saying that Donald Trump was doing it for the safety of the citizenry and all this stuff.
So I think he has the power to do.
So the appeals court, though, then hasn't totally turned it down yet, but has said, like, no, we're not going to put this back into effect. This is what came out on Friday night. Like, no, we're not going to put this back into effect. We need more information from both sides. So executive order still in halt process.
Yeah.
But
And
what's
that's the only one
interesting
he's having a trouble with.
is while you make the point that the Democrats have no congressional power, so it has to be the judges.
That's what they're trying to do, at least.
This guy who stopped the appeal process, appointed by George W. Bush. So
Right. Well, he went about it in a much more appropriate way than the
Right.
last judge. It was just
Yeah.
like, nope. He came at it like, I need to file motions and stuff. I don't know if this
so
is
we'll see.
constitutionally
I guess
legal.
we'll see what that story turns into. I mean, that's about as much as you can go further on the bad executive order this week. But
Yeah.
that we'll see.
We're
I'm
probably
sure
going to
that-
wind down on executive orders. I think that at this
I'm
point,
sure this one will be in the news for a while.
we'll see. Once they change it, I don't think they can really stop it.
But
And-
what he's going to have to do is totally withdraw the current executive order and rewrite it.
Well, they're
And-
talking about how they might be able, and that's what they're saying this judge is actually doing, is he might just be trying to go after one section of it so that the rest of it is still in effect.
Right.
Just a few things, like saying that I think the issue he had was that it was barring travel from one whole country, and it's the blanket statement of that upset him, and he didn't know if it was 100% constitutional.
So
I think it's going to be a hard argument to make. I think they've got this in the bag for the most part, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see the administration tweak it because they are getting so much blowback.
This is why you don't let Steve Bannon write your executive orders. That's all I'm saying.
Might not be the best of his ideas.
So,
but the rest of
hashtag President Bannon.
I'm not going to that one. But yeah, this is the only executive order where he's getting this much, negative feedback on as well. The rest are fine.
Right.
And I get it. I mean, they have to fight back in some way because they don't have a lot of power right now, and they're trying to do everything they can.
I don't know. We'll see. Well, I think, I don't know. I don't know. I think that as long as I don't have a problem with being fought. Like I said, I made my points on the refugee issue,
Right.
the non-existent refugee terrorist issue that we have. So like we don't need to go back down that path. But as long as it's halted, it keeps those people out of the streets. So we'll see. And
Yeah.
speaking of people in the
Around
streets,
6 o'clock tonight, protesters began tearing down the metal barriers lined along the outside of the building where Yiannopoulos was scheduled to speak. A few people rushed towards the front of the building, one of them armed with a baseball bat. And then 10 minutes later, protesters began throwing firecrackers at the building.
Okay. So obviously one of the biggest stories going on this week is the Berkeley riots.
right.
Up in that California university.
And if I'd like to not have to comment on a riot every single week.
Get used to it, buddy. It's going to happen. So let me go over a little bit of the facts of what actually took place. So it actually went down on Wednesday, February 1st. The whole reason it happened is because Milo Yiannopoulos was speaking at the college. Ended up causing $100,000 worth of damage. At least 6 people were injured. Then they went ahead and moved into, there's about 1,500 protesters there that ended up moving from the campus once they were dispersed into the actual city of Berkeley. No one was arrested. Milo had planned to speak about cultural appropriation.
That doesn't even make sense. Like
That doesn't make sense to me either.
Like-
No one was arrested?
Right.
I have a lot of video
That
footage
does-
of them doing shit. You can't
Yeah.
figure who that is. Let's see. Donald Trump tweeted, toying with the idea of defunding the college. And adding irony to it is that Berkeley is renowned for starting the free speech movement
Right.
back in 1964.
Yeah.
So the riots are getting a little old
Yeah.
It seems like this seems to continually happen every single time.
Yeah, the thing is, like, okay, here, we'll go with issue number one. One of my big issues here is that no one was arrested. I get that protesting is First Amendment, and I am I'm good with protesting. If you, I
It's
wish
funny
it
they're using the
wasn't.
First Amendment to protest the First Amendment.
Right.
So
I wasn't. I don't know. I don't have a problem with protesting. I wish it wasn't so common.
Right.
And I will.
Well, you hear that all the time. It's the peaceful protesters. There was a bunch of peaceful protesters. But then I think that...
Well, yeah, what was it? Like the mayor said that it was like 150 people.
Just 150 bad apples. 1% of the people there were just destroying everything.
Well, and I'm sure that's probably...
The 1% ruining everything again.
I'm sure I'm sure that it's probably true that there was really just like maybe...
Yeah, 150 seems like a pretty big number.
There was a lot more people there than there were D-bags there.
Yeah,
but
here's the problem: they're letting it happen.
They
no
are
one
letting
is
it happen,
stopping.
and nobody's accountable at all for their actions. Like, here's the thing: you can disagree with Milo Yiannopoulos and not
do like 50%
destroy
of the time.
your school. Like,
Right.
you can disagree with that guy.
My problem is that whenever I'm watching videos of Trump supporters being attacked, like there's a couple of people afterwards that are on the liberal protesters that are just like, oh, sorry, we really wish that didn't happen. But you're not really stopping it.
Right.
Like, you're watching these people do this stuff.
Well, there are a lot of people.
And it was the same.
There are people on that I commonly see discuss, talk, shout political opinions on social media sites, and the one person in particular is extremely liberal, like even to
Over
me,
the top.
annoyingly liberal.
Yeah.
Like
they
doesn't really actually
do
think
that.
about more than talking points. And hasn't learned their lesson from the election that we lost. But the thing is that those people who are constantly shouting about the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and all these atrocities that America brings upon its own, say nothing when there's a group of liberals beating with sticks,
Yeah, I saw that one.
unconscious, and
That was
pepper
fucked up, man.
spraying Trump supporters.
Well,
Look,
and I've been seeing this for a while. So I saw the one a few weeks back at a different Milo. During the inauguration, I think a Trump supporter had her hair caught on fire. Like someone lit it up. You can see the hand, and I can even see who it is in the video. But again, they're all apologizing, like, oh, we're not for that. It's like, well, everyone seems to be doing it.
But there are a lot of people, too, that are just silent on it.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
think
saw a bunch
that,
of students from the college in the footage that were running around just like, oh, cool, they'll take pictures
Yeah,
and
I
whatnot.
think that
Like, you're cool with it.
I think that if you're going to, especially if you feel so strongly that the other side is just a bunch of crazy Nazis, and then
Right.
you go out and beat people in the street, like, hold your side accountable.
Yeah.
And-
Well,
and
that's the
the
problem I have.
fact
I
that-
don't see anyone denouncing the riots on the left. Like a big one I bring up is NPR.
I
which
will.
I don't. Yeah, yeah, you will. And that's good. But like NPR to me is just beyond irritating because like I'll give you an example. Whenever the inauguration was going on, every single thing that had to do with the president and just the inauguration itself, majority angry face reaction. Everyone's all mad.
Yeah.
Everything talking about because there was riots during the inauguration as well that they don't talk about as much.
Yeah, that
And
really
I saw a bunch of videos of people, like I said, getting their hair caught on fire.
Yeah,
getting
I
the
will
shit beat
say.
out of them.
Well, I do have a
And all of those got
very-
majority likes off of NPR's Enlightened.
Well, and what I was gonna say too, with as far as likes go, like I have this love-hate relationship with social media, right? Because
it's a good source of information. People do speak their mind.
It can be a good source. It can also be a really bad source. But the thing is, when the media doesn't cover things like what's going on at Standing Rock or like what's happening, because you're right, there were. And
Pop
why
top.
is it that in every single protest a Starbucks lays victim? Like you would think,
we're so mad at you.
right? You would think that of all places, Starbucks would probably survive the fires, but
I'm hopped up on Mountain Dew. I hate you, Starbucks. Take you out.
but I do remember those videos. And that's the one good thing that social media has brought us, that there are people with cell phones in real life that are putting stuff up, and so you do have access to that. But yeah, there is a huge problem with that.
I wouldn't have a few years back because I was just watching MSNBC and then CNN. And before the technological revolution and everyone's got a camcorder in their pocket, that's what I was eating. I was eating it day and night, and you wouldn't have seen any of this.
Yeah,
and that's irritating to me as a conservative, because if it's the other way around, you're blasted with it.
Right.
And it needs to be fair. It needs to be balanced, because both sides are doing this shit.
Right.
That is terrible.
And as far as both sides doing this shit, we'll comment on Milo Yiannopoulos.
Well, that's the reason why this all even happened.
This guy, like, I know now that this has happened. Most people know who he is now. Up until a couple
I think they've heard of him. I think they got a lot of misinformation as well, and that's coming from the main media as well.
I think
looking at you, CNN, looking at you, Berkeley mayor.
I think a little bit.
They literally called him a white nationalist, and everything that I have seen does not lead me to believe that he is a white nationalist.
I understand, though, why somebody would see him as a white nationalist.
I understand why somebody who's wrong would see him as a white nationalist. I don't think that gives you any special authority to be wrong.
I think somebody who's not like you and me, who's not a political news junkie.
Well, obviously, our listeners are very well informed since they're listening to us,
right.
So they're excluded as well.
But I do think that somebody that doesn't follow up on things day to day, minute to minute, for fun, like that's what I do for entertainment. I play Xbox once a week and I watch the news like every other minute of the week. So I think that not just because of the media, because you don't have to use the media to think this guy is a white nationalist. If you look at
your own perspective, I can see where they could get to that conclusion.
I see where you can get to that conclusion. Does that mean that you should stomp on his right to say what he says? No. And the fact, and
I think a lot of what he says is thought provoking. I disagree with half of it.
Will probably shock a few liberals, but
I'm shocked.
I don't think that he is a white nationalist. I think that he's a jerk sometimes.
He's definitely an asshole.
And I think that if he is, I wouldn't even say that I think that he's racist. I think if he is racist, he backs up, he gives you data for how he gets to this conclusion. So maybe he's racist, and maybe he's playing it off as it.
I don't think he's racist. I just think that he's come looking at the same data set as him, which he is very quick to cite. He's pretty good about that. That I come to a different conclusion, even while hearing his own arguments.
Right.
50% of the time. The other 50% of the time, I'm in agreement with him, and I say, okay, that makes sense. Good on you. The other part, I'm just like, when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to a few of the other things that he says,
his thoughts about himself being gay,
right?
Interesting one.
And taking an anti-gay pill and thinking that if the straights are better than gays, he literally said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You can't walk your way out of that one.
No.
So I disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I understand why people can get offended by it, but that's kind of the point. We're saying that you need to. He has the right to say it. You have the right to listen to his arguments and disagree with his conclusion. Yeah, as I did.
And I think, I do. Look, I'm not a huge fan of his. There are things that he has said, not typically on race relations. I don't want to buy, and it's not that I agree or disagree with his points. I don't want to buy into that stuff because I don't need Milo Yiannopoulos to tell me what ethnic or what race relations are in Sweden and Norway. Like that doesn't. Okay,
he's from the UK, so occasionally he brings that up. He brings up statistics from the UK.
So I think he has some good points on feminism. Like I do too. I think that I don't go too far into him because he's such a polarizing character that I really don't want to touch him.
And most of the things that I've watched and were in agreement with were from quite a while back.
Right.
Here lately, it seems like he's kind of given more into the drama. He's less on the facts. He's more into the fact that he's Milo Yiannopoulos.
Right.
And
now I will say that for a guy with the rhetoric that he spreads, maybe don't have your hair bleached blonde with your white pasty skin and stand up there with.
Are you judging him?
No, I'm just saying that
he's a judger.
He is the ideal Aryan. So I could see how somebody out there would be like, wow, look,
and now that
there's Hitler's wet dream, and he's and he's spouting the rhetoric. So
I don't think that he's spouting rhetoric. Yeah, exactly. I do not think so.
I don't think he is.
Now, Richard Spencer, I have actually watched the I didn't realize that he was the dude that was standing up after was it Trump's win that was hail our president.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. Yeah, that guy was
Richard Spencer. I would say, and you don't, the listener can go.
I'm not upset he's punched in the face. I'm saying that.
I'm not upset that he's punched in the face.
No, not at all.
I would call him a white nationalist.
Yeah. I was at first because I didn't know who he was, and my gut reaction is don't ever punch anyone in the face just for saying their views until I listened to his views. And then I was like, well,
liberals have kind of done themselves an injustice or a disservice because too often, at least in the last couple of years, people have been labeled racists and bigots and fascists. And so when you
That's a good point, man. Yeah.
When you see a news article floating around there on the web, or you see it come up on TV and you hear white nationalists gets punched
I just
in the
believe
face,
it immediately.
And so does 50% of the population,
right,
because they've heard it all before and they've been called it all before, and it's not a winning strategy.
And the problem is it took me 2 months before I even did research on the guy to see if it was true or false.
Right.
I just assumed he wasn't from the get-go because it's been overused.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously we've gone on at length to each other about how that played its role into the 2016 elections. But I think that coming forward, the problem that the left had is they called everybody racist.
Right.
And it wasn't true.
Right.
But I think the right is too quick to dismiss that there is a bit of truth, that there are racists who have been emboldened, and we need to get them out now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think we just need to disavow. We don't need to shut them down. We don't need to say they can't say whatever the fuck they want to say.
Does David Duke have the right to endorse Trump? Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Should Trump disavow him? Probably
yes, he should.
So. Yeah, he probably should, because it's not a good look.
Right, and he did do that, but still.
You bolster those guys up, and those are not the voices, because then it becomes easy for the other side. Yeah. You set yourself up. You tee it up for them. The other side can now say, look, the KKK endorsed him, so...
Now, I still think that is the silent minority of the right party. I think that the opposite side for the left, the real extremists and whatnot, they're the vocal minority. So they're still the minority, but they're just, for whatever reason, they're allowed to do...
I think, though...
Liberals aren't really willing to disavow them yet. And that's what I think is a huge issue.
I agree with you. I do think, though, that the reason that that the vocal minority, I think they're both vocal minorities, and
but I don't think the racist side is brought down a bit. They want to call everyone racist, but I don't think they really are.
I think they are brought down a little bit, but I think they're louder now than they were before the 2016 election process.
That's what we got to watch out for.
That's where liberals got nervous and started labeling everybody that disagreed with them.
They overplayed their hand.
They overplayed their hand
big time, and I
think they do it with Milo Yiannopoulos. Richard Spencer. Here's the thing. It's tough for me because we said a minute ago, like, I don't mind that he was punched in the face, and I don't mind when
Sorry, guys.
when Nazis are punched in the face. At the same time,
he's doing a Nazi symbol, dude.
At the same time, though, do your own homework and figure out who these guys are, because you can look at Yiannopoulos in certain videos, or you can misconstrue what he's saying, or you can simply disagree with him and not have to set fires. That doesn't do anything except put the entire country on edge, not on edge, but it puts them off your side. And I am a dude who would typically, I'm a guy who outspokenly said the riots in Ferguson were a good thing. The riot in
I said the same thing.
The riot in Berkeley, not a good thing.
No, because it's a different issue.
And now
you're upset that a guy gets to come up and disagree with you,
right?
And that's that's totally different,
yeah,
from what originally Black Lives Matters was, which was trying to help out,
which
with
has
the police
also
shootings.
overplayed its hand.
It is now, yeah. They've come to that one video said where it's like we probably have very different prescriptions for how to fix these things. I agree with what Black Lives Matters is trying to do. I disagree with how they're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with these protests.
I mean, I don't think he makes. I don't think he makes only bad points, and I don't think he makes only good points. There's a lot of bad points that Milo Yiannopoulos has made, and I definitely understand why people would be offended. I understand why people would be up in arms, and now with both sides playing it too. I got on a tangent a while ago, but I said I do think too, and I know that he's doing a tour, but because of who he is, look, he's the more articulate way better looking Michael Moore, right? Like, he is a guy who wants to stir up controversy.
Well, whether he's right or wrong, I think he makes a good argument.
But
and so he's very
with his 160 college tour, you're starting fires at every one. Like, now, that's
the point,
Is
though.
that right? No, but both sides are playing into each other's hands, and so if both sides of the extremities, the Milo Yiannopoulos is who he is extreme. Like, he's measured and he's articulate, but he has very.
Yes, and there's a lot of satire that goes into his thing, and it is provocative is the best word for it, because it is. And I think that a lot of comedy in times have been provocative, and you can tell when he's doing it for a laugh and when he really means it. And
but he also overplayed. Like, I think sometimes that, like,
it's that shock value. He is a shock celebrity,
value,
so
but
he's gonna say that.
He kind of uses it as an upper hand when he'll talk about himself being gay as an example.
I thought he hated himself. I don't know.
What?
I thought he hated himself. That's what I got.
But he uses it to his advantage. So he'll say in one statement, "I would take a pill to not be gay if I could," and in the next statement, when he's making an argument against Muslims, he would say, "Well, you guys hate me anyway because I'm gay." Well, you can't use it both ways, dude. You can't hate it on one hand and then be like, "Well, poor me."
Right. So here's my exact point. So 1,500 people showed up to protest him instead of listening to his ideas. Not one of them could form a decent argument to counter what he's saying. He can't say his bit, and someone else can't. You have to resort to Joe Rogan to be the only man that can best this guy in an intellectual debate. You need, like, Democrats and liberals need to do better. They need to have their facts set. They need to come into the argument prepared and win. If you win, then you'll bring people to your side.
You know what stops people like Milo
Yiannopoulos?
Wow, that was a struggle. What stops people like him from showing up to a college campus near you is turn him off. You don't even have to show up to debate him. You can just turn him off, and he doesn't.
I don't think that's the right idea either, because then you're just not hearing viewpoints. I'm glad I listened to everything that he said.
I'm glad that I listened to him too.
Because you don't hear that stuff.
If you get so offended that you just can't
then you
handle
need to turn it off.
Before you start breaking windows at Starbucks, turn off the monitor. Like,
and
you
I think
don't
he's
have
right to say,
to
what
it.
are you doing in higher education? Because higher education is about challenging your preconceived notions of the world and expanding your mind and learning, absorbing knowledge. And you can't do that whenever you live in a bubble. And that's what we're seeing too much in college campuses, is they just want to be told whatever they're comfortable with
and
escape anything that might be a differing reality.
You know, I think at the end of the day, as far as liberals are concerned, I get it. I totally understand why you don't like this guy.
I get it. I still think he has the right to speak.
I still think he has the right to speak, and I still think that, you know, use a conservative principle here. Like, let the market dictate itself. If you are so offended and you don't like him so much, then stop buying into his stuff.
His book's #1 on Amazon right now.
Because guess what? Yeah, because guess what? If he's not the #1 news story this week, his book's not #1 on Amazon.
And that's why he's provocative, because it sells, and he's made a name for himself. I wish he was back to the substance that I saw in the earlier videos. But luckily there's an archive, so people can go back.
He's always been a jerk. He's a bigger jerk now.
He's a jerk, yeah. I mean, that's just
he's a jerk in a different way now, though. He's very much.
I would argue that, like, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and all them are jerks as well in a different way. Like, that's how they made their careers, was just to make fun of the other side, and that's what he's doing. It's very comparable. Like,
I think
it's satire. I think his is definitely
Jon Stewart's
media and
internet
Jon
media
satire.
is a little bit smarter
because it's syndicated satire. It's on a network, and it's kind of regulated. He just throws it out on social media.
But, you know, I think you cannot like this guy, but if liberals want to actually do better, and if the liberals want to stop losing elections, which I get it, like, and I have the same argument, like, we lost one, and, like, that's fine, I get it, but don't hurt your own cause by acting irrationally.
So what do you think about the cops, though? No arrests. Do you think that the college campus did enough to? I mean, they knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, and they were quick. They got him out of there and as quickly as could be. But then what he was reporting and what a couple other people said that they seemed to see was that the campus police basically had the attitude of just let it happen. Just let the little kids have a temper tantrum and see what happens. And obviously $100,000 is a pretty expensive temper tantrum.
That was his argument. His argument was they didn't want me
Zero
there,
arrests?
so they just let...
I can't grab the guys who are like dancing around the bonfire they just made.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean...
I can't get on with it, man. Like, I
but
just
how
can't.
I didn't see a lot of cops even there.
Not in the footage, because they said they were all standing back. They came with the impression of just let it burn itself out.
So how many?
That's $100,000 worth of taxpayers' money.
How many cops were there?
No,
okay.
I haven't seen. I know the CNN said that the cops were keeping a perimeter, and that eventually they came in with.
Because I saw like 6. And so, like,
not enough.
And if that's the case, then, like...
Did we learn this with the pipeline? Staff your shit, goddamn.
Right. Like, if that's the case, like, I get why 6 guys aren't making arrests, because there's, like,
it's like, no, I'm not going to die, dude.
I'm not going to die to get...
Thanks, Commissioner. Like, we need more than a handful of guys.
But... It doesn't make sense to me how that was allowed to take place. And look, I get it. I'm all for freedom of speech on both sides. You want to protest.
Protest the shit out of everything.
When you start burning stuff down, like, don't expect to not be arrested for that.
And that's an issue I have too with CNN and the rest of them calling it a protest and not a riot, because it was a riot. And I understand that you're damning 99% of the people that were there. But at the same time, when it turns into a riot, it's a riot. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
You could say that there was a protest and then inside of it was a riot, but it doesn't make sense.
I agree. I think the whole thing was bad. It was bad for real. Like, the only thing the protest did was help Milo Yiannopoulos further his message.
So much more rich.
If that's what liberals were trying to do that day, was help Milo's sales, then that's what you should pat yourself on the back for.
He even calls himself out. He's like, I wrote an article on how to beat me. He's like, you guys don't do it. Every time you do this,
that's
I get richer.
another reason people don't like him.
Right.
So, like
I
get
said,
it.
As soon as someone can sit down and beat him as badly as Joe Rogan did, kudos to Joe Rogan, because that was difficult to watch.
Yeah.
Later on in the program, they ended up having a okay conversation. I didn't agree with anything Milo was saying.
No.
But I still understood he was trying to come from someplace.
Right.
What he thought was a data set. I didn't agree with it. But, yeah, bottom line, when it comes to the protest, I disagree with how they handled it.
Absolutely.
Every single form of authority.
Yep.
I disagree with how they reported on it with CNN and the mayor coming out and calling him a white nationalist speaker, which was fucked.
They rushed to it so fast, and it
shows their prejudice. It shows that you're not getting the type of reporting that you really deserve, and you need to have a diverse source net so that you can
I think it shows
two
things. I think in certain circumstances where it is on purpose, it shows prejudice. I think there's another thing to be said, though, about just the fact that journalists aren't as good as they once were. So every network is rushing for ratings. They need
There's so many journalists now with online web and everything. There's just a huge pool of them.
They need a story. They need this story to be on their network before every other network, right?
So
they'll grab the Sandy Hook story, and there's 2 shooters, and they're using all kinds of weapons. And Adam Lanza's brother is under arrest, and like nobody, and he doesn't have a brother, and like
who's this guy?
What is happening?
What do we do?
This? So
we don't care. It's a good story.
Right. So I think that when this happens, because look, people knew Milo Yiannopoulos by name, but they didn't know his work until colleges started burning down.
Yeah.
So I can see people from media networks going to Facebook, typing in this guy's name and being like, well, it's overwhelmingly decided that this guy is a Nazi, so we're going to run with that story. That's bad journalism.
Right.
Media, hold yourself accountable for that.
That's something Philip DeFranco says constantly. He was like, I spend 5 minutes and I do better reporting than all of these syndicated news networks.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So I agree with you.
It's not that hard. Although I made a mistake, so it is actually that.
Right.
I'm just kidding. It's totally hard.
We're not journalists, though, so we're just yelling at them.
That's true.
So I agree with you. I think the police should have handled it better. I think
he has the right to speak.
The protesters should have handled it better. And I think if you don't like this guy this much, like all you
form a better opinion, form a better, more articulate argument, and challenge him.
Yeah,
because that's how you're gonna get people to your side.
Yep. So I think we can shake hands on that one.
Yep, I think so.
new tension between President Trump and a major U.S. ally. Sources say the president grew angry during a phone call with Australia's Prime Minister last Saturday. President Trump calling the Australian refugee agreement a very bad deal.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
Well, with a policy like that on leaks, I guess you can't be too mad that that some transcripts from your phone calls got leaked this week.
No, I guess you can't. I'm not upset about it either, though, to be honest.
No, well, I think this will be the presidency of leaks.
Well, we'll see about that.
When you tell,
so there was 2 prominent leaks, though, right?
2 prominent leaks. The ones that I guess Trump had 4 phone calls this week,
as you do when you're president,
which was in the news, with 4 different foreign leaders. I'm sure he had more phone calls than that, but he probably talked to Ivanka in Manhattan or something. Not Ivanka, Melania.
About to say,
right?
I think she's up.
I don't know. I think
in
she's
DC.
at like Neiman Marcus trying to get her clothes back in there or something. But no, so he had 4 phone calls, I guess, with the leaders of Russia, of course.
Which we knew was coming from the week before.
And
Australia,
and
then Mexico, of course.
And I believe Iran, too.
Well, they did the sanctions on Iran.
Well, they did the sanctions on Iran. So I guess we can start there with Iran.
Okay.
It's weird.
Who didn't see this coming?
No,
That's my point going right into it.
Yeah, no, I think that...
When have we ever had a good relationship with Iran? And I mean, Jimmy Carter, good job. You tried.
Right. I mean, there can be there's something to be said about whether his attempts at mending a relationship are more political or more like... I don't know that they could actually happen. I don't know that Iran has any reason to actually want to do anything.
They don't like us, and especially right now,
so,
with them being such close partners with Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, in that region.
That's
why we're upset, is that they're trying to claim a lot of Iraq.
Here's what I'll say.
We gave it away.
I'm not like a huge supporter of the Iranian government.
I'm not at all
by any means.
a supporter of the Iranian government.
Here's what I would say, though. I think that what scares people about Donald Trump sending people out to the news to put countries on notice, whatever that means.
Yeah, that was a little unclear.
It felt like he just pulled that off the
dude,
Colbert Report.
We're watching you, bud.
Yeah,
like real?
Bears, you're on notice, Iran.
You too.
Right. So I think what makes people nervous is how I don't personally believe. I know that Donald Trump has smart people around him, but I don't think Donald Trump he's a businessman and he's a reality TV star. I don't think this guy probably thought too much about U.S.-Iran relations prior to...
Well, Iran's been in the news for quite some time. I mean, even going back, they're no friend of ours. I mean, that's the thing I don't understand. I didn't understand this past nuclear deal that we did with that Obama did and Kerry, the Secretary of State. I didn't understand. Like, I understand what they were trying to do is be diplomatic, but as Obama consistently did, he underplayed America's hand. It's like, oh, yay, we made progress. We have a treaty with someone. We have, these things in place. They're not people that like us, and they're not deals that are in our favor.
I don't disagree
Why are we
with
doing
that.
it?
He also underplayed his hand with Russia and easing up sanctions on them without getting anything in return, which looks like Obama, which looks like Donald Trump's next step.
Yeah.
Like,
well, remember, Obama had just wait a little bit till after the election. I'll have more leeway.
Yeah,
and then guess what they did? Crimea and everything else, because he basically was told by the United States president, "You're cool, dude."
Republicans were really upset about that, and were citing that up until a few months ago.
To be fair,
and
Republicans
now
are still upset. They still don't like Russia. It's Trump that likes Russia. Like Republicans don't like that guy,
and they shouldn't.
I understand why they would.
And when Bill O'Reilly asks Donald Trump how he feels about Vladimir Putin and then says he's a killer, and the response to that is, well, we have killers, you think we're innocent? Like, dude, what are you doing?
It doesn't sound nice. He's right. I'm sure we do. We tried to take out Castro.
But do you want the president of the United States on record telling that to the world? Probably not.
Probably not. He wasn't president yet, but
yes. He wasn't?
I think that was during the...
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's in the news again.
I'm sure his position hasn't changed. And he is president now.
Right. So
I understand why we would want Russia to be an ally, not only to defeat ISIS in the Middle East, but also to avoid what I assume is a war.
But
that
you
was
see that it's not unlikely at all that sanctions or something will be lifted to benefit Russia before we get anything out of the deal.
I would hope not. Like I said, I want to see what my trade-off would be. The U.S. Army and the Russian Army join forces in taking out ISIS in the Middle East. That is worth it to me to release sanctions off of Russia. That makes sense to me. That's a good trade-off.
To me,
I would want that to happen.
Here's
what
I'll
be mad, dude.
I think sanctions will get probably lifted.
At some point they will. I
think they will before we get before we benefit from it, because you got to pay them back for the election. So I don't know. I just
Did Julian Assange get something out of it too?
The way that
what about the Clinton camp, did they get something out of it for fucking up?
Has Julian Assange said anything since he was going to turn himself in for extradition?
No, because he got called out. Yeah, don't say that shit, dude.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think that what makes people nervous is how quickly and how loudly he's going about things. Like, if you have a bad conversation with the Australian Prime Minister, you probably don't need to like come out and say it in the media.
I mean, it was leaked out. They basically were like, it was horrible. He hung up on him, and I think he did. And I'm gonna go on record here. I think he was right for it. I mean, you probably know a little bit more about Australia than I do and their economic benefit. But regardless, I think that was a bad deal that Obama signed.
I don't think it was a good deal. I think it was a deal that he did to purposely mess with how Trump was going to handle it. I'm pretty sure that was signed like
there was a few things that Obama did right before leaving.
Yeah, it was like the last week of his
move.
presidency. So
I really didn't like him at that point. I do like him now. I like Mr. Obama, the man. I like him a lot. I didn't like him as president almost at all. But I think that
but we do need to be careful when we and I get that Trump tried to play damage control a little bit, came out and said that, we have a great relationship.
It's a wonderful relationship.
About it.
Don't even worry.
Talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Still, basically what Australia does, they have refugees that they would not admit into their own country and kept them off onto special bases or camps in the islands surrounding Australia.
Call that extreme vetting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's terrible when we do it, isn't it? So basically they said, we don't want these guys. As an agreement, you need to take them. And Obama said, yes, we will. And I disagree with it. I don't see why we should. They're on Australian soil. Take them in.
But you acknowledge the fact that we should try to maintain our relationships around the world. The countries that we do have good relationships with, we should probably, as long as...
There's nothing wrong with calling out a friend. Me and you do it consistently.
Right, but as long as they're mutually beneficial, like we shouldn't be callous in the way that we talk. We should be a little bit more tough, measured.
You gotta be tough, and I think that Trump did the right thing. He got called out for, and he had all that the report says is that he had the audacity to hang up on someone else that he was upset with.
No,
we all do that.
It didn't. The report also said that Donald Trump called the refugees the next generation of Boston bombers.
Oh yeah. I don't agree with that. I don't think there's any evidence for it. I can see that you could ambiguously assign them their future. It doesn't make any sense. However, I understand that he's coming out from a national security standpoint, where he's saying we need to make sure that these people are vetted and whatnot. I would hope they'd be being vetted as they were on the island by the Australians. That's what I would hope would be happening, but I have no idea if it is or if it isn't.
Well, if they have a vetting process like our 3-year process, then they should be good on terrorism. So I do think, though, that we should remember that, like, certain allies we have are beneficial to us. We have billions of dollars in investment and trade with Australia on an annual basis. Australia has backed us in
military
operations,
and that's why they are a good ally. And I think that's why you're seeing Trump,
including Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan,
and D-Day.
Right.
And they had one troop.
Tons of cultural ties between the two countries.
And that, to me, that's the only thing that matters, because so many of our allies they break the rules, and they don't allot as much money of their GDP into their military at all. And these are guys that are supposed to come to our aid should anything arise. Mm-hmm. And it's like us in Australia, and no one else has been building up their military. But guess who has? Russia, China, Bashar al-Assad in
And-
Syria because of the Russians now,
Right.
and they have a ton of our
So
stuff.
I don't think it's. So I think that Donald Trump and the administration should just be careful when. Now I get that it was a leak, and I think that when you're a guy who was all about leaks, it's really hard for you to be like, "How dare you?" And I think they're going to be the administration of leaks, because when you tell other government departments, "Don't tweet unless it comes through me,"
Yeah.
that is fascistic. Like, I'm sorry,
It is,
but
it is.
it
It needs to, that needs to be tempered as well. So I think that we're going to deal with a lot of leaks, and as I said previously, totally fine with it. As long as it doesn't cross the line. Like, it's
We
not
have-
nude pictures of fucking Melania leaks out or something like
Right.
that. Like, don't cross the line.
We have, but
Attack
we
that
also
government,
we
that's
also
fine.
have. I don't know that it's necessarily a treaty. It's an agreement. The Five Eyes intelligence agreement, and it's between Australia, the United States, the UK, Canada, and somebody else. One more. It's 5 countries, and basically it's an agreement to not spy on each other, and it's also an agreement
I'm sure
to
nobody keeps that agreement.
Right, but it's an agreement to freely share like intelligence information with each other, so that we're all on the same page, and we all. So I think though that if you hurt your relationship with countries that can be valuable to you in those types of ways, that's not good, because if you don't want to go too far to where you get Australia going, well, we'll just exclude the United States from this. That doesn't help us. That
Here's
doesn't
what I'll
help
say
anybody.
to that point. If you saw any footage of the Australian Prime Minister, he won. He knew he won. He was laughing. I don't think this hurt our relationship one bit. People love it when they're winning.
It helped him because Donald Trump fumbled the ball. Like,
and like I said, the military aspect, one of the only allies that is actually pulling their weight and is willing to come to our aid when we need it. So he's going to have to honor this, even though it goes against every single thing that Trump wants to do with accepting these refugees. He has to.
And
do
watch
it.
the Democrats use that in the next election.
Oh yeah,
because they will. Like, that's politics. That's what's going to happen. So I don't know if it'll be a successful play, but expect them to use it. And so that was one phone call. Another one he had was about bad hombres in Mexico.
There's a very bad hombre.
dude,
I'm a bad hombre, bro. I told you we're out there.
Just stop, man. Like, stop talking. Be more of a politician,
Hey, man.
Donald Trump. Like,
Hashtag bad hombres is the best thing that ever happened to me. I use it constantly.
I think it again. I made this point quickly last week, but Mexican elections are coming up next year. President Nieto has a 12% approval rating right now.
It's not very good, man.
If you want the Sandinistas and the PDR to win that election and you're not getting any cooperation on the drug war. You're not getting any cooperation on.
And that's
on
what I
anything.
think that Mexico just missed out on. And like I said, what came out of those leaks, which was interesting, is President Trump basically said, hey, if you help pay for the wall, we will help you out with our American forces. We'll come in and we'll fight the cartels for you.
Yeah, and let's make a correction to the media for the media, because I've seen that story. This might be the alternative fact of the week. I've seen that headline so many times on so many sites, but the way that headline is written, and if you don't click on it, you won't find out what Mitch just said. The way that headline is written is Trump vows to send military into Mexico.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Come on, man.
Dude.
That's a dirty play.
Way to go, guys.
Right. And that's the problem. And if, I've heard CNN make the comment this week that, like, look, they brought in all these conservative talk guys to ask softball questions, and they have. But if you don't want that to happen, then those liberal like self-starter blog sites, whatever, don't print stuff with false narratives that's the reason that fake news became a term, because you're only hurting yourselves. You want to keep not getting invited into that room, keep writing stupid headlines that
says we're about to send our military into Mexico. We're gonna take them out.
So now that everybody that reads that is like, he did what? They're not gonna build a wall. We're sending the freaking military in. That's
now I don't
ridiculous.
think that's gonna help Peña Nieto at all. I think that his approval rating is already so low, and now that it's leaked, I understand that they don't want to pay for the wall, and that's a big. It's almost like Donald Trump putting his stance: we will make them pay for the wall. He can't back down off it. And Peña Nieto's the same way, where he can't back off that he's not paying for it.
Right.
But at some point, like
He's not
the
gonna
cartels
pay
have
for it.
definitely been a problem.
Right, but he's not going to pay for it because we know. We
If
know
you could meet
how-
it halfway and go with like a 10% tax, I
Right.
could see some good coming
But
from
they
it.
need to actually compromise. Like, and
They do. I think
big-
sending their military in to take out the cartels is a very good compromise. I think that really helps out the not only Mexico but Central America.
Well, it depends though, because if those voters
We have to
are
make good on it, too, though.
Well, and if those
So-
voters are under the impression that like America is just going to dog Mexico at every press release, then they're more likely to not care what deal Nieto can strike up with Donald Trump, and
This is really the only place.
then they'll put in the PDR. They will elect the PDR next year,
Right.
and
Well, I think they won't vote for Nieto because he did that. I think that they'll say you had a chance to help solve some of our problems, and if you won't, we're just going to side with them.
But the PDR, I'm not sure the PDR has a great position on stopping the cartels either. So
I'm sure
like
no one
I
does.
don't
The cartels are
think-
there to stay,
and
like-
it will definitely hurt the United States goals if Nieto does lose re-election.
it depends on how much we isolate ourselves from Mexico.
so-
It might not have anything to do with us at that point, but we'd have to really cut off ties. And I don't know if that's something I would want.
I don't know if it's something that we could get anyway because
Yeah.
we're so. I mean,
We're economically
people are still
involved.
jumping that wall whether we're cut off or not. Like, so you're never gonna stop illegal immigration completely. You can cut it down.
It's
a lot,
already been
but
cut down a lot,
and
so.
it has. It's not. It's unfortunate that people like you and me have to sit here and talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not a huge problem. It's rhetoric, and it
It
makes
is, but it's so ingrained at this point that there's a vast group of people who want to see it happen. And so at some point you have to bring into the account of the morale of the country. And it makes us feel safe that we have the wall. So I don't actually like the wall. I don't think it's going to serve any purpose other than perhaps make these people happy.
Yeah.
I mean, the final, what percentage people are they? And
It's ridiculous though, because it will be an expensive wall.
it
And
will. Somehow it's going to have to get paid for. No, it's not in the terms of the federal budget. It's a drop in the bucket. It's not that much compared to what we're spending. I don't know where we're at now. I think 800 billion or something. We're not
Yeah.
at trillions anymore like we were for a while. But yeah, it's like what, 10, 20 billion they're
Yeah.
thinking. So it's a
Something like
drop,
that.
but you know, it all adds up.
Yeah. So I don't know that. So those are the phone calls, I guess, for the week. We'll see what happens. I just think that the United States government, the White House especially, should be very strategic with how they say things. I know that you're not going to stop leaks from happening probably, and you can't control the information that gets out in those leaks, but don't give people a reason to leak your stuff.
Well, they're going to. Liberals in every single bit of the government are going to do everything they can to demoralize the administration or to expose the administration.
Make him a one-term president.
Make him a one-term president. Where have we seen that before?
Yeah, I wonder where that plays.
I think my shitty side did that for about
for about 8 years.
I mean, they made him a one-term president for 8 years. They did a great job.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But and then the other thing on foreign policy, I guess we'll just touch on real quick, that also happened this week, which was here's one thing, and it's a small thing, and I know it's just rhetoric anyway, but I will give the Trump administration credit a little bit because and we'll get into this at another time because for me especially it's too much of a topic, but you know, I'm very much, I understand the reason for Israel and our alliance with them, but I'm very much on the side of the Palestinian people in that conflict.
I'm more on the side of the Israelis.
So what was interesting to me and what I noticed as soon as the election happened in the United States is that Netanyahu wasted no time starting to build settlements in the West Bank. Because
I think he thought that he could take advantage of Trump. And I'm glad that he said, I'm not comfortable with this.
So this week, to my pleasure, even though it's probably mostly rhetoric, is that the White House did come out and make a statement, and they didn't totally crap on Israel, but they said that obviously the main objective in that region is to establish peace. And I don't know that the building of new settlements is the best way to obtain that goal.
It is not the best way to obtain that.
It is not the best way to obtain that goal.
It is not the best way.
So it's nice to see, though, that whereas somebody like me who is very passionate about that expected Donald Trump to just allow Israel to do what they were going to do. So it's nice to see a little bit of pushback, at least in the form of a White House statement.
I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about for this administration is how they're going to handle this. And only because I've seen the statements from Donald Trump and from Jared Kushner and the people that are inside where they actually think they can solve this. And I think we both would agree that that would be absolutely incredible if they could actually solve it.
I would.
That's a tall order.
It is an unbelievably huge order.
But I think
first of all, every presidency since forever has had that same goal in mind, and none of them have achieved it. And I bet you the people in that region probably have that goal in mind, and they haven't achieved it for
I don't think so.
a bajillion years.
I think that Israel would rather just crush Palestine, and I think Palestine would rather just not have ever had to deal with Israel.
But you have to admit that not all of those people feel that way. Like, there are people that
most of them just want there to be peace.
At some point, the Middle East, if the world doesn't implode first, will start to civilize. Like, you can to civilize in the way that the West has, to where I feel like, because I know it, because I see these freedom fighters in Israel and Palestine who on both sides, there are Israelis and Palestinians who don't have a problem with their neighbor. They don't have a problem with those guys being there. Yeah. And there's one famous, I'll see if I can find it, put it in the comments. There's one famous thought project that I don't know if it was a Palestinian or Israeli did, but they went onto the other side and they posted pictures of 5-6 faces. 3 of them were Israelis, 3 of them were Palestinians. None of them were labeled. No one knew who was who. They don't have to hate each other, and there are people in the region that don't want to. That is a very, very volatile and vulnerable region of the world. Right. There's a lot of things.
So I like a president approaching it with a simple naivety of being able to say, "I can fix this."
Right.
We'll see. I don't think he can, but I'm excited that he's excited about thinking he can, and let's see what he can actually accomplish.
I'm not gonna hold him to it because I think there are better. I think
that's fair.
I think Donald Trump is probably not the best person to be the one to do it.
That's why he's sitting in Jared Kushner, who's got a high-ranking position, and he's Jewish. He's the one who converted Ivanka into Judaism, obviously being her husband. Mm-hmm. So he thinks that he can do it, and that's apparently where this is coming from, and why Trump apparently really wanted to do it, but he didn't know if he had the means. That Jared Kushner is the one who's very confident that he can do it.
Still don't have faith in him. So I don't have faith in him because I don't think it's an achievable goal. Yeah. Not right now in 2017.
Just hang out in Camp David for like 3 weeks. It'll be totally cool. Everything will work out.
It wasn't a bad attempt.
No, it wasn't.
By Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, it was good.
And it actually did do something. I mean, was that Iran and Egypt?
I thought so. Yeah.
Or yeah. So that was that. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens. So, as far
keep on the leaks. I'd say keep it coming. As long I'll take as much information as I can.
Just be nicer in your phone calls. Maybe don't hang up on people. That's
I think once Trump gets past, he's got these things that he's going to be tough on different nations for the beginning. I think once we settle these, we squash our beef with all these different countries.
A lot of it seems so petty.
It doesn't to me. To me, it's something where I'm like, this is something that this country's been taking over us for the past 8 years or so, and the ship needs to be righted. And you need to tap your friend on the shoulder and be like, hey, dude,
it looks like a guy who has scientifically sized hands equivalent to a woman, and he feels like he has to compensate at every step of the way.
He loves his hands. These are terrific hands. Look at my hands.
They're so big, and so is everything else.
That's what he was saying. So.
It's all proportional. So.
All right. So going into our speed round topics we didn't really have a chance to really expand upon during the course of the main show. First that I wanted to talk about definitely would be Sally Yates the Attorney General,
Yeah.
the last Attorney General, rather.
The acting.
Right, who was dismissed
Right.
by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with her being dismissed.
I don't either.
Look, she was on her way out anyway, so like, and here's my
She
thing.
just didn't think it through.
I don't think that. No, I think she did. I think she did it on purpose. I think she wanted to make a statement, but I don't think that
Well, then it was the wrong statement.
department agencies that there's a necessity for individual political statements. So
Yeah.
it's.
You can challenge it. There's certain aspects of the executive
And
order.
I think, and from her own words, what's ironic about this whole
Well,
situation?
that's what she didn't like. She didn't like the Muslim ban. Well,
Right.
that's
She
what it's being
basically-
called. I don't think it's a Muslim ban,
No,
but
it's a
the travel ban.
She told the State Department not to defend the executive
Right.
order, and so she was rightfully fired and replaced for that. Look, she did it. In my opinion, she did it because she was on her way out. She wanted to make a statement that I don't side with Donald Trump. What's ironic about the whole thing, first of all, is that Jeff Sessions is set to replace her, right?
Right.
So
Well, if he gets confirmed.
before she got high, like when Obama appointed her, before she was sworn in, she was questioned by Congress. She was questioned by then Senator Jeff Sessions.
Right.
And what's interesting about it is that Jeff Sessions asked her if, and he was talking about Barack Obama. He said if the president, I guess
That New World Order, man.
I guess I should turn my phone off before the show. So
Watching us.
basically, Jeff Sessions talking about then the Obama administration questioned her and said, if the president were to sign into law something that you personally or politically disagreed with, is it your, or if you thought it was against the law or walked on that line, would you defend it? And she said to him, what I would do is I would go to the president personally and I would discuss this issue with him and then tell him, either we need to talk about how to change this and make it right, or I need to resign because I can't do it.
Well, imagine that. She's
So-
more willing to cooperate with Obama than
So
Trump.
now that Jeff Sessions, the guy who asked her that question, is about to take her job,
Yeah.
so
It's fair to say, though, that that's not the answer that Jeff Sessions wanted. He
No,
wanted to
no,
hear,
no.
you hate Obama just as much as me,
Right.
and you shut it down.
I will shut it down.
I will
Yeah.
shut you down.
No, so
That's a little ironic, too,
is
but that was never
the-
quite stated. I think that's the way it probably went,
Right.
though.
So, but I don't have a problem with her being fired because I
don't
don't
either.
think that agencies, that federal departments like that, that you need an individual making a political statement. Let the agency make a political statement.
Yeah.
Sure, let them do their job.
If you
but
really think
I
that
don't
it's against the law,
I don't-
say so,
Right.
but-
I don't need to know what Max the intern thinks about, A, B, and C.
Is he
So-
21?
Right. So that was issue number one. I think we both agree on that one.
Yeah.
Another thing in the story this week, which you can set us up for, was
That was definitely the Quebec mosque shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, most news channels picked this up right when it started, but they never finished the story. Like I remember it breaking news on CNN and all
Mm-hmm.
that, and they said that there was a shooting at a mosque up in Quebec,
Right,
and then there was just all speculation without any facts whatsoever.
Right, there were reports that the shooter was yelling Allah Akbar.
Yep, that it was a
and
Muslim attacker, a Moroccan.
two Muslim attackers at one point.
Yep, and they were supposedly Moroccan, which was totally inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that the Moroccan was just someone that was there.
Right.
Basically ran from cops thinking that he was going to get shot again, that it
Right.
was another terrorist. And they captured him, and they took him in, interrogated him, and basically cleared him. And it ended up being, I think it was a Quebec citizen.
Yeah, some white guy with a really French
from,
name.
Yeah, from Quebec.
yeah.
What was what it looked like. And basically, as soon as that came out, which was about a day and a half later, because I remember, like, by then, all main media just completely lost interest, and you didn't hear about it, which doesn't make any sense to me, because as liberals, there's your story.
Well, and
there's
yeah.
a guy who doesn't look like the right is saying he should look. And I think we are definitely in agreement that that's a terrorist attack.
Yeah, a terrorist attack is a terrorist attack. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs or what your
Yeah.
skin color looks like.
If you target a specific group and then inflict death and terror upon them,
Right.
you're a fucking terrorist.
So you would have thought that, especially the liberal media, would have taken the fact that this
Right.
guy is a Trump supporter. He's a crazy anti-government, right-wing extremist dude. Runs into a mosque, shoots 16 people.
Yeah, I think 6 died.
So, but
It's a big deal.
Here's the thing: neither the left nor the right went back to correct the story. If you go,
Yeah.
for days and days and days, you go back and
Phil
look
DeFranco did.
at. There you go.
And that's why get your news station up and running, Phil DeFranco, because
Right.
I will be coming to you.
But
It's most reliable.
It's ridiculous because the still for days. The story was still a Moroccan yelling Allah Akbar, and
I think
just
a lot of it
wasn't
has to
the
do with
truth.
what he said, Phil DeFranco, that is, that it had to do with clicks. I mean, whenever it was Trump was doing his Muslim ban and everything, so that's what was on the mind.
So
and
then
then
it
they can paint that picture. Even the left can paint that picture,
Right.
and bring in clicks because
So-
no one really cares. It's up in Quebec.
Right. Exactly.
It's not America.
And it goes back to that earlier point that we made that like they're just not accountable because everybody is looking for the story now. So
Yeah.
nobody waits for facts. They just want to report on it. So they
And then leaving up the inaccurate
that's the
information.
convenience of having
you're
a
flipping the
once a week
truth.
podcast that doesn't air live. I don't have to get a story up at any certain time. So
But if you wait a week, you might be called out for it.
right. Right. So, that's horrible. And I think that and I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future, but the media has to hold themselves to
Yeah.
a higher standard.
And the right needs to hold itself to a higher standard to show that terrorism is a problem in the world right now. It's not just like obviously we see a big portion of it coming from this side of the world in the Middle East, but that there's enough homegrown here and in other countries. And another thing to point out is that Quebec is very harsh on gun laws, and they came in with automatic weapons, and they didn't know where they came from. Now,
Yeah.
I never found out where they came from.
No.
My guess would be an American source, Minnesota, something right across the border. I don't know. So that's another thing that the right also needs to talk about as well. And now I'm not for gun restrictions or anything like that, but I think it's healthy to make sure that you're taking in everything into account. If these weapons came from America, we need to acknowledge it. We
Right.
need to try to do what we can to have it not happen again.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I totally agree. So that was definitely something that should have been at least it should have probably been reported more. It should have at least been fixed.
Clarified, man.
Yeah.
You start a story as breaking news and then don't finish it.
Right. Admit
What happened.
When you got it wrong, go fix it and acknowledge
Right.
the fact that you have it wrong.
Exactly. It's kind of your job.
Right. Because the fact of the matter is, more people saw that Moroccan man shooting up a mosque story than they heard about how it actually went down. So so I think the media needs to do a better job there. So
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yep.
then the last thing that I wanted to bring up this week was an interesting story that only really got a little bit of talk, but I think it should probably be mentioned. The
religious one?
Yeah. So President Trump did the whole national prayer breakfast or whatever.
Calling out Arnold Schwarzenegger.
yeah. Other than the shameless self-promotion
Donald Trump.
of The Apprentice.
Right.
He said something interesting. So and I know it's a fake news New York Times piece, but but you can I'll give you more links to it.
They get it right sometimes.
President Trump vowed on Thursday to overturn a law restricting political speech by tax-exempt churches. Potentially huge victory for the religious right, gesture to evangelicals. Mr. Trump said that his administration would totally destroy the Johnson Amendment, 1954 law that prohibits churches from endorsing or opposing political candidates at the risk of losing their tax-exempt status. And then it goes on and on and on and on.
Right.
And, I'll put that link down there in the comment section. But
So-
I think that pretty much sums it up. And I don't like it personally. And it's not that I don't... It's like, I'm not... Look... I know that it's fun to say that Christians are disparaged, except if you are an Iraqi Christian, you can still travel here. That's interesting. That doesn't make it a Muslim ban. But I do think that church and state being separate is an important foundation to.
I would agree.
To
for me,
Constitution.
when it comes to this particular thing, Now, I don't agree with churches having tax-exempt status. I think that if you're bringing in a certain amount of revenue, I think you should be able to be susceptible to taxes. However, I don't like this part of it. Like, I don't like that this Johnson law, or whatever it was called, it comes out and says that you can't support a presidential candidate or you can't support a political party, or then you get hit with taxes.
You can, you
I don't
can't
like that. Everyone should be able
support,
to.
and I don't think that.
I don't see why not. If it's, let's
as
be
a
honest,
church, because you're speaking for your entire
you have a
congregation,
congregation,
right?
Yeah,
so
that's my point.
Right. So if I'm that guy in the congregation that doesn't think that homosexuality is bad, that doesn't agree with the church,
you can
that doesn't
leave the
want
congregation, and then he can deal with that on his own terms. So I think that that's something that the pastors and the clergy guys, whoever's running the show, they need to weigh those options. But they should have the option to say, this candidate holds my interest and the interest of my congregation, and so I'm going to vote for them. Because that's what people do. People are always going to vote for their own self-interest.
No, they can vote for them. I think the issue comes
and give money
into
to it to see that happen.
telling their congregation who to vote for.
Well, their congregation can leave if they want. They're not sticking around for no reason. You know, if they disagree, then you leave.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
it's not
disagree with that
Scientology.
point.
Yeah,
I do think that but I do think it challenges a fundamental.
No, I don't agree with them having tax-exempt status. But I also don't agree with them losing their tax-exempt status because they want to try to help their congregation politically. I have a problem with that because I think that in America, everyone should be able, even religious groups. And like I said, the left unfortunately has this problem where they're for every single religion to have more rights and more political power except for Christians.
So then
that seems to irritate them.
Then by that argument, do you support Citizens United, which is essentially the business version of what we're talking about?
Yeah. Now, I think that there should be a tamper on it so that you can't do unlimited type of funds that go way over the line where you're donating millions and millions and millions of dollars and basically buying elections. I have an issue with that, but it needs to be broader. It needs to include everybody.
Do you think then,
not just businesses?
So
religious.
then Pat Robertson can't put millions of dollars.
I would not want to, but I don't think that they should lose tax exempt. I think they should lose tax exempt status just because they should.
But
I think
you realize that Pat Robertson will put millions of dollars in without that regulation in there.
Right.
And by Donald Trump's own words this week, for every regulation that we create, we need to lose two of them. Which
I don't
super
think
genius because we've never seen deregulation lead to bubbles that lead to recessions.
Well,
I can't think
of
two of them that happened in the last 15 years.
Obviously, they need to be smart ones, and I think that I'm not opposed to regulating the amount of tax dollars and tax revenue that comes from churches. I don't think this is the right regulation. I think this kind of stands in the way of their own rights, as opposed to
they're constitutionally they are separate, so they don't have
rights.
That's
fine, but I still view them as citizens, and it still is a group.
They're not citizens though; they're entities.
Well,
a church is an entity. We're not talking about. Look, do
you think that Moss should be able to support the candidate that best serves their needs?
No, I don't. I don't think that any religious organization should be allowed to put funding into. You can have a say in it at the ballot box.
Ballot box, yeah. But still,
so you don't have to put millions of dollars into it, because then what you do is you and I don't like slippery slope arguments, but I have to make it
a slippery slope
for the purpose of the right should realize that, like, now once you've done that, when mosques start doing that, now you're looking at the furthering of your Sharia law. And you're going to be afraid
should have
of
that right to do that. I just do. I think that if you're a religious organization, we do support religious freedom.
Which, by the way, Sharia law is not happening in the United States.
You'd be surprised in other areas where it's on the rise. So we need to. I definitely think that we should continue to say we're against it. But
yeah, sure. I don't think it's bad to say that we're against it.
Right.
I also think that it's never going to happen or become.
Well, hopefully it won't.
Law.
Yeah, hopefully it won't. But I get enough people who think that it should, and it will. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Who thinks that it should?
People who like Sharia law. There are these dudes. It's not like there's no one in that camp. They just don't happen to be here right now.
Right. So I don't know. I just personally, I'm not trying to disparage those congregations. I'm not. Yeah. I don't have.
Like I said, I don't think they should have tax exempt status. You should be taxed.
No. Yeah, they absolutely
should. But I also think
should.
that you should be able to spend your congregation's money in political elections to further their own needs. I also think that it should be capped in a certain way. So I think there should be a lot of regulating going on.
Here's my
just not the ones that are on right
compromise. if that's the scenario, I'm good with it. But I think that at the same time that you eliminate something like the Johnson Amendment and you say that, okay, we're not going to penalize you for political
stating your
views, then you also simultaneously say, but you're not tax exempt. You have to buy into this status.
I mean, that's almost essentially what they would be doing by saying you lose it. Then you basically have to buy it. And I think it should be a right. I just also think that your tax exemption should not be a right.
Yeah.
So I think that it should be a right that you should be able to, if you're a religious organization, to be able to put your money behind a certain candidate. I also think it's a right that, if you're making money off of our citizens,
I disagree.
And you're
I agree with the point that I think they should not be tax exempt, whether you're talking about a temple, a church, or a mosque.
Yeah, I think we agree. I just think that we're arguing semantics and we don't agree on the exact way that it would be done. But I think we agree.
I think we could come to that compromise. But I think as it's worded, but at the National Prayer Breakfast, I can't get behind abolishing that amendment without the tax exemption being taken off the table. So
that's what we need to senators and congressmen that are going to actually
if that
fight for these
happens, then I can meet you in the middle there. But I'm not willing to say, yeah, cool, let's not penalize them for political views if we're still giving them the tax benefit. So that's kind of what I think on that one. So
yep.
I think that about wraps it up for us this week, though.
Yep.
So, again, I'm Brandon Condit.
I'm Mitchell Hernandez.
And remember to follow us on SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at The Devil's Advocate. I'm sorry, / The Devil's Advocate 2017.
There you go.
Or on Twitter at The Devil's Advo 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you drop us a comment,
Yep.
Call us out when Mitch lies to you.
I will respond every time you do.
And, I think that's about it. So this week, we'll go ahead and leave you with the one rational thought that came out of the week.
It's supposed to be about free speech. It's supposed to be about your right to express yourself, even if you're probably kind of a bad person, even if you're saying awful things. You shouldn't stop just because somebody comes and they light something on fire or they, threaten to hurt you. I don't think that's the way things should be going.